The Commanders, same division. They get Jaden Daniels back. They were 5-12. I don't know if they're going to win 10 games, but they have a lot of cap space. They're the oldest team in the NFL. The Commanders are going to be a different-looking team. Again, 7 one-score games. They won only 2. Dan Quinn is solid, if not exceptional. Cap space, lost a lot of close games. They get their quarterback back. Just don't forget how gifted he was as a rookie. The third team.
There is no third team involved here. The exclusive focus is the Washington Commanders. I find myself genuinely energized by the prospect of a redemption narrative unfolding for Jaden Daniels and this entire organization. It was remarkable how swiftly the football world moved to entomb both the rookie signal caller and the franchise itself. That rush to judgment remains deeply frustrating. Observing the broader NFL landscape, you can detect certain trajectories. Collins is ascending. The Giants, Commanders, Lions, Chargers, and Chiefs appear to be declining. Then you have the Texans, Patriots, 49ers, Cowboys, and Eagles in more ambiguous positions. Regarding Washington's specific direction, I cannot claim absolute certainty, but I hold a firm conviction. They will be improved this coming season relative to the last. That is not faint praise. I anticipate something greater than mere incremental progress. I expect genuine greatness from this organization. Reflecting on what we witnessed during Jaden's rookie campaign, and we are currently navigating this peculiar temporal space between seasons, constantly referencing last year, next year, and everything in between, there was a persistent effort to characterize that debut as anomalous, a fluke, an unverified one-year aberration. That characterization is fundamentally inaccurate. When year 2 arrived, the narrative shifted to, even when he was on the field, his performance was lacking. This completely disregards the context. The supporting cast was inadequate. He was playing through injury. He was operating within a disjointed offensive structure. That is an extraordinarily difficult environment for any quarterback, let alone a rookie. The element that truly compounds the frustration is the developmental year he effectively forfeited. He requires that developmental runway. He is, without question, a special talent. I have already positioned him within the elite classification. This designation is not primarily about his rushing ability. It is about what he accomplishes with his arm, his touch, his passing precision, his anticipation. The mobility is an ancillary weapon, not the primary justification. However, with a mobile quarterback of Jaden's archetype, I am eager to observe greater rhythmic integration, enhanced equilibrium in his decision-making, and a more refined internal clock regarding when to accelerate, when to extend the play with eyes downfield, and when to concede and live for the next down. That discernment is not innate. It requires accrual through experience, particularly for a quarterback possessing his expansive toolkit. Developmental trajectories are never linear for any quarterback. They are, however, considerably more linear for archetypes like Matthew Stafford or Joe Burrow, whose arsenals are comparatively narrower. Jaden operates with a vastly expanded array of instruments. Let there be no ambiguity. Jaden Daniels is also an exceptional pocket passer. That dimension of his game is undersold. Now, I must express reservations regarding certain organizational decisions. Dan Quinn has been a source of mounting frustration for me. This is notable because I was an unequivocal advocate for his hiring. His arrival was a primary factor in my bullishness on Washington, my willingness to invest belief in their trajectory. However, when I survey the landscape of defensive coaches currently operating at an elite level, individuals hired as coordinators or head coaches who have constructed historically formidable units, specific names emerge. Hafley, Vrabel, Mike McDonald, Rail, D'Amico Ryans, those individuals architect teams. They construct defenses that are not merely competent but suffocating, special, anxiety-inducing, defenses that compel the conviction that victory can be achieved through defensive dominance alone. That is the standard I anticipated Dan Quinn would meet in Washington. Across 2 seasons, he has not met it. We can invoke injuries. We can cite contextual variables. I acknowledge those factors. Nevertheless, my expectation remains unchanged. I expect that level of defensive identity. Consider a hypothetical exercise. If you constructed the Houston Texans organization in its current form and simply transplanted Jaden Daniels into that infrastructure, the conclusion would be foregone. the league would be inescapably wrapped. Consider what Seattle assembled this season. The defensive unit complemented by offensive weapons like Jackson Smith-Njigba, Kenneth Walker, and that supporting cast. If you transported that Seattle defense to Washington last season, the entire complexion of that franchise would be transfigured. The divergence would be staggering. This is why my anticipation regarding Jaden Daniels' continued evolution remains undiminished. However, what I am genuinely awaiting, and I articulated this during off-season discourse before the previous campaign commenced, is the construction of a team that enables Jaden Daniels to function as a game manager. This is compelling because Colin has recently elevated game management as a virtue worth celebrating. I have been advocating for the primacy of elite game management indefinitely. I have consistently maintained that authentic specialness in a quarterback is predicated upon elite-level game management. When you can position Jaden in that operational mode, simply managing, not rescuing, the league is wrapped. His poise, his preternatural maturity, his surgical accuracy, his supplementary athleticism, it is finished. When he can operate within that game management framework while retaining his complete skill set, delivering the critical downfield strike, executing the mundane checkdown, threading the back shoulder fade, and also, when appropriate, ripping off an unremarkable 4-yard gain where the C's merely part. And he collects the easy yardage, slides at the appropriate moment, rises, flips the football to the official, and we are facing 2nd and 6. Let us proceed. That is the inflection point. When Washington can settle into that operational identity and construct the complementary roster to support it, the franchise is golden. And then, in those sporadic contests requiring elite individual improvisation, you present defensive coordinators with an insoluble dilemma. Mid-game, they cannot anticipate, they cannot counter, they cannot locate solutions. In numerous respects, this mirrors the Philadelphia Eagles from 2 seasons ago. That is precisely what manifested with Jalen Hurts and that organization. They did not require him to personify Superman or function as an elite game breaker on a weekly basis throughout the regular season. However, when the moment demanded it against Washington, unfortunate for Commanders supporters, he possessed that capability. Against Kansas City, he possessed it. Against Green Bay, his game management was impeccable. This illustrates why quarterback versatility, the capacity to don multiple personas, is indispensable. Washington has not yet constructed that team. The previous season was, self-evidently, a comprehensive loss attributable to the cascade of injuries. Yet even at full health, particularly when I evaluate this roster through the specific lens of Dan Quinn's stewardship, my expectation threshold remains elevated. I anticipate superior focus. I demand heightened intensity. I expect to viscerally experience the culture in the same manner I perceive it in Houston, in Seattle, in New England during their dynastic run. I have not detected that cultural imprint from Washington, even during their NFC Championship game appearance. I observed Jaden Daniels. I witnessed his sorcery. I saw Cliff Kingsbury's schematic fingerprints. I recognized Terry McLaurin. I noted Zach Ertz. I saw individual players executing individual assignments. I did not experience culture. Jaden will perpetually radiate lightness. That is intrinsic to his temperament. I adore it. Without equivocation, Jaden Daniels is precisely the archetype of player I would be unequivocally honored to compete alongside. That is incontestable. Nevertheless, I am seeking evidence of a more disciplined, more purpose-driven organizational culture. I want to sense, even during adverse moments throughout a 17-game campaign, that capitulation is not a permissible response. There were observable instances last season where Washington's collective resolve fractured. You could perceive it transpiring in real time. Contrast that with Houston following C.J. Stroud's injury. There was no detectable resignation. There was no surrender. Consequently, they qualified for the postseason and secured a playoff victory. That is the indomitable influence of culture. That is its irreducible power. When Jaden was unavailable, and despite legitimate confidence in Marcus Mariota as a capable reserve, genuinely, he exceeded reasonable expectations for a backup. Did the defense perceptibly elevate? Did they manifest situational resolve? Did they rise to confront exigency? Examine the contrasting responses to quarterback injury between Washington and Houston. The Commanders exhibited commendable resilience against Denver in an undeniably entertaining contest. That requires acknowledgement. However, compare that to Houston's defensive suffocation of Bo Nix and the Broncos following Stroud's exit. The disparity is chasmic. It is diurnal and nocturnal. Houston's defensive dominance in that context was far more attributable to Mariota's unexpected productivity and a charitable Bo Nix interception than to systemic defensive coercion. I am awaiting Washington's capacity to impose rather than rely. Currently, their operational methodology remains excessively dependent on serendipitous gifts and the singular extraordinariness of Jaden Daniels. Regarding their recent competitive identity, inclusive of their NFC championship trajectory, fragility may constitute excessive severity. However, Miami Dolphins-esque is an evocative approximation. Brian Flores employed the break dancer characterization. Initially, I did not fully apprehend his emphasis on that specific franchise as the exemplar of that critique. I comprehended the conceptual framework but questioned the singular fixation. I now propose that Washington has embodied that exact archetype. Consider the recent historical evidence. In that NFC championship encounter with Philadelphia, the Commanders commenced competitively. The contest was within reach. Then Philadelphia simply imposed their physical will. They bodied up. They asserted dominance through brute force and declared no. That identical phenomenon manifested in the Super Bowl against Kansas City. It materialized for Seattle against New England. Alacrity and elusiveness possess inherent limitations when confronted with concentrated physicality. This partially explains Baltimore's recurrent postseason inadequacies. You simply encounter superior physical imposition. Washington's excessive dependence on Jaden to constitute their running game exemplifies this vulnerability. This was conspicuous even during their wildcard elimination of Tampa Bay. They could not execute conventional runs. Every third down and fourth down conversion required elaborate artifice. There was never a moment when the offense could declare, 3rd and 2. Assume a compact formation. Physically impose. Offensive line, secure 2 yards. Execute. That moment never materialized. Indeed, that contest's precarious proximity was attributable to Tampa Bay's capacity for physical imposition. This operational archetype possesses an expiration date. Consequently, I contend that Washington requires not merely cultural recalibration, but philosophical reorientation. This transformation is inherently imperceptible until its manifestation renders it self-evident. One cannot presage it, one can only retrospectively recognize it. None of this diminishes my conviction regarding Jaden Daniels. He is unequivocally the foundational cornerstone. Without a particle of uncertainty, he is the appropriate central figure. Provided this organization achieves even nominal health, notwithstanding my preceding critique, irrespective of this comprehensive discourse, their trajectory remains ascendant. They will demonstrably improve. Conditional upon Jaden Daniels' physical availability and the presence of a merely competent surrounding roster, a baseline threshold of professional adequacy, his brilliance autonomously elevates this franchise to a minimum of 8 victories. I am not establishing an arbitrary ceiling. I am delineating a floor. With Jaden Daniels, you are perpetually within striking proximity of consequential achievement. The remaining variables, defensive efficacy, rushing consistency, complementary football, will determine the altitude of your ceiling. However, his floor is sufficiently elevated that competence, absent catastrophic decimation of the roster, ensures viability. These constitute my personal reflections. I am genuinely eager to receive your perspectives. What is your assessment of the Washington Commanders and Jaden Daniels? Do you align with Colin's characterization of their trajectory as ascendant? I invite you to articulate your viewpoints in the comment section. I commit to reading each submission. Whether your orientation aligns with or diverges from my own, I welcome substantive engagement. Let us deliberate. Let us constructively dispute. Ultimately, let us derive enjoyment from this collective exercise. I also request your consideration of subscription. We are collectively cultivating an exceptional community here, and your participation would be genuinely valued. My aspiration is the construction of a space to which we all feel authentic connection, a community we are genuinely enthusiastic about belonging to. I am confident we are progressing meaningfully toward that objective. Please also consider bestowing a thumbs up upon this video, as it materially enhances visibility and algorithmic discovery. I express my sincere gratitude. I will convene with you in the subsequent installment.